Welcome to Backbone Unlimited. My name is Matt Hartsky. In this episode, we're going to talk about how to go from your first elk hunt to becoming consistently successful and how to do it faster than most elk hunters ever will. Because here's what I've seen over and over again. Two guys can hunt the same unit at the same time, put in the same effort, and one starts figuring it out while the other one stays stuck for years. It's not luck. It's not even experience. It's how they're learning while they're out there. If you're not familiar with who I am, I've been hunting and guiding Western big game for over 34 years, and I've been a professional strength conditioning and nutrition coach for more than 30 years, and I'm here to help you become a more consistent and successful elk hunter. Most elk hunters are putting in the work, but they're not actually improving as much as they would think. They're repeating the same mistakes, hunting the same way, and just hoping something changes. The guys who improve fast are doing something different. They're paying attention to the right things. They're making better decisions and adjusting in real time. So in this episode, I'm going to break down what actually moves the needle and how to start improving immediately. The difference between hunters who figure elk out quickly and those who stay stuck for years isn't just time in the field. It's how that time is used. I've seen it too many times to ignore. Two hunters can be in the same unit, hunting the same days, putting in the same miles, and one starts getting the elk consistently while the other one keeps struggling. Same effort, completely different outcome. The guys who improve fast are paying attention. They're not just moving through the mountains, they're watching what's happening. They're asking why elk are where they are, why something didn't work, and what they missed. And they're making decisions based on that, what they're learning. More importantly, they're willing to accept feedback, even when it's frustrating, even when it means they mess something up. The guys who stay stuck, they do the opposite. They repeat the same patterns, hunt the same way, and when it doesn't work, they blame pressure or weather or no elk in the area. But the reality here is pretty simple. Most elk hunters don't lack time in the field. They lack honest feedback. So one of the fastest ways to start improving is to fix when you're moving, not just where you're going. Most new elk hunters move way too much in the middle of the day, for instance. They're hiking ridges, dropping into timber, pushing through bedding areas, and they don't even realize they're blowing elk out. There's no bugle, no visual, no obvious sign. The elk just slip out the back door, and now you think the area is dead. But it's probably not dead. You just educated everything in it. Elk are built around low light movement, right? They're crepuscular. Early morning and late evening are when they're exposed, transitioning between feed and bed. That's where your real opportunities happen. Midday's different. That's when elk are bedded. They're tight. They're focused on security. And if you're just crashing through that country, no matter how quiet and slow you think you're going, you're just working against their strongest advantage. The guys who improve fast figure this out early. They learn when to move and, more importantly, when to sit, glass, recover, and wait. Because most elk aren't avoiding you, you're walking into them at the worst possible time. Most hunters treat pressure like it ruins a hunt. They hear more trucks, more bugles, more people, and they assume the elk are gone. In my experience, they're probably not. Pressure doesn't eliminate elk. It relocates them and compresses them into places a lot of elk hunters either overlook or they avoid because it's nasty. As pressure increases, elk shift into terrain that gives them an advantage. Steeper, thicker, harder to access areas, places with limited visibility, better escape routes, and more consistent wind. They don't disappear, they get tighter and more predictable. If you understand what's happening, you're going to figure that out. The mistake most elk hunters make is they leave when pressure shows up. They go looking for quiet instead of asking where the elk just went. They abandon areas that still hold elk, just in a different form. The hunters who improve fastest do the opposite. They pay attention to pressure and they let it guide them. If hunters are pushing from roads, elk are moving away from that. If bugling pressure increases, elk start avoiding those areas or go silent in thick cover. That's usable information. Pressure is not the problem, it's information and how we interpret it. This is one of the biggest traps in elk hunting, especially early on. You end up hunting what looks good instead of what actually holds elk. That might be big open basins or pretty country, long glassing views. It all feels right. light, it looks like elk should be there, and sometimes they are, but most of the time, that kind of country, it gets overhunted, overglassed, overpressured. Elk don't survive by being visible. They survive by having an advantage. So what consistently holds elk is the stuff a lot of elk hunters avoid: that broken terrain, those edges where thick timber meets feed, the small pockets with security and escape routes and wind advantage for the elk, places that are harder to glass, harder to get into and access, and honestly, really less appealing to hunt. That's what attracts me, right? Because I know it's going to discourage most other guys. That's where elk can exist without constantly being exposed. The problem is those areas don't always look good at first glance. They don't give you that big open confidence boosting view. So a lot of elk hunters, they just skip them and they go back to what feels right instead of what actually works. And that's why they stay in empty country. Elk don't live where it's easy for you to hunt. Listen to that one again. Elk don't live where it's easy for you to hunt. Hey, if you hunt public land elk and you're tired of grinding through random seasons, I built the elk hunting series of ebooks for you. Most hunters don't struggle because they lack effort. They struggle because they lack a system. And that's exactly why I built the elk hunting ebook series as a complete progressive framework for Western elk hunters who are done guessing and ready to hunt with intention. Volume 1 is going to be Foundations and Reality. I reset your mindset and expose the assumptions that quietly wreck seasons. In Volume 2, Finding Elk and Understanding Pressure, you'll learn how elk actually move under pressure so you can anticipate instead of react. In Volume 3, Terrain, Wind, and Position, I break down how to use landscape and thermals to consistently create opportunities. In Volume 4, Calling, Silence, and Pressure, sound becomes a decision tool, not an impulse. In Volume 5, Bow Hunting Execution, we're talking about close range strategy so you can finish your encounters. And in Volume 6, Late Season and Post Rut, we're talking about how elk shift after the rut and how to adapt when others quit. This is a system built for consistency. This isn't theory. It's a structured system to help you find elk, read country, and make confident decisions every season. Buy each volume individually or bundle them all to save 50% off at backboneunlimited.com. One of the fastest ways to improve is learning how to read sign right away, not just noticing it, but understanding what it actually means. Most elk hunters, they might see tracks, poop, rubs, and immediately think elk are here. And maybe they were, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're here right now or that you're anywhere close to where you need to be. Old sign tells you elk use the area. Current movement tells you how to hunt it. That's a big difference there. So we've got to talk through that. Tracks with direction matter more than random tracks scattered all over. A line of travel, consistent movement, purpose, that's information you can use to predict elk. It tells you where elk are going, not just where they've been. Freshness matters, obviously, right? But context matters even more. Fresh tracks in bad terrain with no structure don't mean much, but slightly older sign in the right terrain with good wind and security can still point you in the right direction. You're not just looking for proof of elk, you're trying to understand their behavior. Where are they going? Why are they there? What time are they moving through? Because sign only matters if it tells you what elk are doing right now. Most elk encounters don't fall apart in the moment. They fall apart long before you ever see the animal. It usually starts with the approach. Might be coming in from the wrong direction, not accounting for how thermals are going to shift, or moving too aggressively too early. You might feel like you're doing everything right, but you're already inside the elk's advantage without realizing it a lot of times. Wind mistakes are the biggest one, not just obvious wind, but subtle changes. So thermals starting to rise or fall, switching as the sun hits a slope. Elk live in that. If you're not paying attention to it on the way in, you're already behind. Then there's noise and timing, moving when things are quiet, covering ground too fast, not going slow enough, not letting the situation fully develop. Elk pick that up long before you ever get a visual. And when you finally do see them, a lot of times it feels like the encounter just didn't come together, but the reality is it was already decided. By the time you see elk, the outcome is usually already decided. Most elk hunters measure success the wrong way. They think it's all about punching a tag. And when that doesn't happen, they feel like the whole season was a failure. But the guys who improve fast, they don't look at it like that. They're tracking different wins. Did you find elk faster than you did last time? Did you close the distance without getting busted? Did you get into position and at least create an opportunity? Those are real steps forward. And even if it doesn't end with an arrow or a shot, because elk hunting is built on stacking those small wins. Each time you locate elk quicker, each time you move through terrain without blowing them out, each time you recognize what's happening before it happens, you're building something. That experience is going to compound because you're paying attention. The problem is a lot of elk hunters don't. They hunt hard all day. Then they reset from the very beginning the next morning like nothing happened. There's no reflection, no adjustment, no carryover. That's how you end up repeating seasons instead of actually improving. If you want to get better fast, you have to start measuring progress differently, because if you're not learning every single day, you're repeating the same mistakes every day. Most elk hunters think improvement comes from doing more miles, more effort, more time in the field. And I love that. It can be 100% true at times, but that's usually not what is holding you back or what actually moves you forward. The hunters who become consistent aren't just working harder. They're paying attention. They're learning from what's happening, and they're making better decisions all the time because of it. They're not guessing their way through a season. They're building understanding every single day. That's the difference. You don't need 10 years to figure this out. You need one season where you're actually locked in, actually observing, and actually adjusting based on what elk are telling and teaching you. That's how the gap closes. So instead of chasing results, focus on building awareness. Focus on understanding what's happening around you. Because once that starts to click, consistency follows. And that's when elk hunting starts to change. Now, if you want to go deeper into elk movement, pressure patterns, terrain positioning, and structured decision making, that's exactly why I built the elk hunting series of ebooks. It's a progressive system designed to help you understand how elk actually use country and how to position yourself accordingly. I have a link to those ebooks in the description. If you want hands-on application and real-time breakdowns, we have an in-person Elk Camp 2026 that is built around this same philosophy: structure, preparation, and execution in real terrain. You can check that out at backboneunlimited.com. And if you want ongoing access to the Team Backbone community, classroom, my full digital vault of elk resources, private discussions, and direct communication to me for planning, you can join Team Backbone at backboneunlimited.com underneath our membership tab. Everything we talk about here is connected. Preparation is not a single video, it's a system. Thanks for being here. I appreciate all of you. Until next time, train harder, hunt smarter, and never settle.